Chapter 1 131 Off-Ramps. The sky is overcast when Leaf teleports into Fuchsia City. Infrequent, heavy drops of rain fill the air with a soft patter as she looks around the familiar skyline, remembering nights walking the streets to ask questions about the mysterious masked figure. She idly wonders if she'd told that past self where her determined curiosity would lead, if she'd have decided to drop the investigation. She supposes it depends on how this meeting goes. Wise Guy is happier flying in the rain than Crimson, but there aren't many others above the city, which makes it easy to spot Red in the distance, not because he's riding on Charizard, but because of the loose escort around him. If she wasn't looking for them, she might have thought they were just a random group of trainers flying in the same direction, but she's seen their formation often enough, loose though it is. They dive down to a field a decent distance from the gym, and Leaf sends Wise Guy down to meet them. She sees Red land a moderate distance away from his escort, not so far that it looks intentional, but enough that when Leaf lands beside him, they're out of earshot of the hunters. She slides off her Noctowl just as Red dismounts from his Noivern and approaches him for a hug. Thanks for coming. She can hear his smile. Well, I already reached my quota for mysterious meetings this week, but I decided what the hell, I could fit in one more. They part, and his smile fades as he lowers his voice with a glance over his shoulder. There anything else I should know, now that we're face to face? Not yet. It's not that bad. Leaf sees Jensen approaching. Just fly around nearby and be ready to come in with a heroic charge if needed, maybe even to join the talk, if not. You got it. He raises his voice a little as Hunter Jensen approaches. The only times I've been to Fuchsia were to help with Blue's training before his battle. Anywhere you'd recommend? Leaf smiles. Yeah, I just sent you a list of nearby places. Blue and I should be done with our meeting soon, then we'll join you wherever you are. She turns to the head of Red's bodyguards and nods. Hi, Jensen. Hello, Juniper. He's scanning the area, features hard to read with his shades on, and she does her best to hold on to what she hopes is an innocent smile. We won't want to linger too long. Looker is worried there might be people watching from every cityscape, zooming in on anyone who flies around. Leaf can hardly fault the paranoia, though it only makes her feel a little guilty for secretly coordinating with Red to bring him to a potentially dangerous meeting place as backup in case things go wrong. He still doesn't know the exact details, but he trusted her enough to come anyway. She suspects he thinks this is a meeting with someone who might be related to the secret lab. We'll try to be quick. Red nods, gives her one last smile, then heads back to his mount to withdraw it. Leaf does the same for Wise Guy, then heads toward the gym entrance. The front desk is manned, but the halls are empty, and when she emerges back outside, she finds an inner courtyard that's just as abandoned, its various sand gardens and arenas dark with the rain. Everyone's been sent on some field exercises, apparently, and Leaf has the whole gym to herself, passing by empty classrooms and rippling ponds until she reaches the inner courtyard, where one continuous sand garden spread around the leader's structure like a moat. Blue stands on the bridge over it, umbrella keeping him relatively dry as he watches Maturin rub her belly along the wet sand below. Hey, congrats on the badge. Thanks. He stares down at his Pokemon. Did I ever tell you that my parents died near Fuchsia? She blinks, then takes a closer look at Blue, wondering where this is coming from. He seems somber, but not in pain. I think so. When Moltres hit the city, right? Yeah. They weren't actually here. They were a bit to the east helping evacuate some of the farms. It's why it never really came to mind that much while I was here. He shrugs. Not sure why it's coming up now. She bumps his shoulder with hers. Gloomy sky. Dangerous meeting. Or maybe it's because you're on your last badge, and it's making you think of what they would say to you, if you were around. Maybe. You're getting along better with your mom these days, right? Yeah. Seeing her every other day without having to be around her all the time helps. But you haven't told her about this stuff? No. Just the thought makes her stomach heavy with expected reactions. We've done a bit of sparring now, though. She's never been that focused on battling, so she's closer to my level, actually. It's interesting, doing something so competitive with her. The paper door slides open, and Janine steps outside. Hey. Hey. Hello. Leaf has met up with Janine a few times since she's taken off her mask, and it's finally stopped feeling incongruous holding both her and her vigilante self in Leaf's head at the same time. She also feels a lot less, not dangerous exactly. Leaf never really thought she'd be a danger to her after their first, or second, meeting, but less danger sense inducing. Which is silly. She knows they're still the same person. But spending more time with her regular side makes her criminal side feel less meaningful somehow, which feels like a dangerous psychological effect that she should probably keep an eye on. Also, Janine has mostly stopped her direct espionage and terrorism, both as a result of the new discoveries and because of all the heightened police reactivity from the rocket attacks, so that helps a bit. Which is also an interesting psychological effect she should probably keep an eye on. Also, maybe all this is hypocritical of Leaf after what she did with the laptop she grabbed under the rocket casino. But somehow it does feel different for reasons, but maybe those reasons are bad, and this is also, etc., etc. We good to go in? Blue is asking, while Leaf forcefully heads off her thoughts before they spiral further. They're ready when you are. I'll be out here, making sure no one tries to pull anything. Thanks, Leaf says, while Blue nods and withdraws Maturin. Any rules we should know? This is, my first peace summit. Or whatever this might be called. Negotiations? Yeah, simple stuff. Belts off, no reaching into pockets, no sudden movements in general. I don't think they think you're a big threat, to be honest, not directly, not to them today. But it's the spirit of the thing. They'll be doing the same. Right. It's part of the imbalance here that they could afford to send some ninja on a suicide mission if it meant killing her. Thanks. It's nothing. The older girl looks discomforted for a moment, and Leaf wonders why. Guilt, maybe? It's Blue who asks, "Hey, you all right?" Yeah, just strange, that's all. Meeting them. She jerks her head over her shoulder. Leaf wonders what she means. Strange because of them? Strange for her, because she's only ever heard stories. But Janine is already summoning her Pokemon, a Crobat first, then a Clodsire, and Blue is already stepping up through the doorway. Leaf is about to follow when Janine puts a hand on her arm to stop her. Blue notices and turns curiously. One extra thing. Father said they're the real thing, even more than he was, and I believe him. Whether they're assassins or spies, ninja work through deception. Don't take anything they do at face value, and I mean that literally. They won't show you an emotion unless they choose to. Leaf slowly nods, taking that in, then briefly puts her hand over Janine's for a squeeze. Thanks again. Thanks to you for doing all this. She pulls her hand back. Good luck. They take their shoes off before walking together through the leader's office and into the cozy inner room, where Koga and two strangers sat. Leaf had half expected them to be dressed like ninja from the shows, faces covered by dark cowls, but they're dressed plainly. Leaf sees the family resemblance in the woman immediately. She has the same sharp jaw as Janine and her father, and the same severe eyebrows, though with his green hair rather than her purple. Leaf looks for similar resemblances in the man beside her, but doesn't spot any obvious ones except maybe the noses. And he's a bit too young to be Janine's grandfather. Both guesses go unconfirmed, however, as all Koga says is, "Thank you both for coming." Koga bows his head to them, shoulders dipping a bit as well. I'm merely here to facilitate this conversation and provide reassurances of safety. I have my own thoughts to share, but will first let you speak among yourselves and only step in if needed. Begin however you deem best. You know us, Blue says, before anyone can start to respond. Seems fair to start with introductions. I do know you, Blue Oak, and you, Leaf Juniper. You may call us whatever you wish. We didn't expect to get your real names, and don't expect having them to matter. Leaf says, voice soft. But I'd still rather call you names that you choose for yourselves. Why? It would make the conversation feel more comfortable. They'd discussed yesterday whether one of them would play good cop or bad. Ultimately, they couldn't decide on whether it would be more help than just being their authentic selves and adapting as needed, moment to moment. Feeling comfortable is unwise when life is on the line. Yours, yes, but ours as well. But, the woman says before they can respond, for the time being you may call me Sevi. And I will be Zhang, the man says. His deep voice is bland as he says it, face showing no emotion, but Sevi still glances at him. A quick flicker of the eyes before she returns to looking at Blue, who shifts his weight. Leaf wonders if they had the same thoughts. Sevipur and Zangoose, a random association? Supposed to be some sign that they're not quite on the same side? Or maybe they'll be doing their own good ninja, bad ninja. All right, Sevi and Zhang, you, or maybe someone above you, asked for this meeting, and you've acknowledged that lives are at stake. What do you hope to gain from it? A few things. First, a sense of who you are as a person. Second, to understand your plan in writing the story of our village. Fame? A way to open communications with us? Blackmail? No, Leaf said, brow furrowing as she glanced at Koga, whose face remained blank. Did he not mention that he expected her to write the story when he shared the details with her? You look to him, as if he might answer. But we understand his motives. It is yours we are uncertain of. All right, well, first of all, it isn't your village, Leaf says. It's inspired by it. I know I put a lot more detail and emphasis on parts Koga remembered from living in yours, but there is some broader body of work about historical ninja clans, and making it a fictional amalgam serves many purposes, at least one of which is potentially beneficial to you. This clarification is important in part because, speculative fiction or not, they might reasonably wonder what the inspirational source for her hybrid story is, given they know the one about them isn't completely made up. And second of all, I had a variety of motives, but blackmail wasn't one of them. A way of bringing you to the table did cross my mind, but what we do here isn't something I think will go best through coercion. Would you allow a psychic connection to be formed as we ask you questions to reassure us? Leaf almost reflexively says no, but inhibits the impulse, instead thinking over what would make her say yes. Blue shifts in his seat, but holds his tongue, not looking at her. If Red Veras is allowed to merge with my mind at the same time to ensure I'm safe, yes. Otherwise, no. I'm sorry, I know it seems suspicious, but I assume you would turn down the same thing? We would, Zhang says, because our thoughts contain risks of anyone in the village being in danger. We swore oaths to do nothing that might better allow an outsider to find it or harm its inhabitants. As Koga did, Sevi says in an arched tone. Leaf wonders if Janine's warning about expressions applies to tone too, then decides not to overthink it. If someone's trying to manipulate you, the intersection of most effective and low-effort response is often to just ignore whatever you need to ignore. The exception clause was fairly reached, Koga says, voice low. And the world has changed around that oath's relevance, eroding its failure mode into inevitability. There are different interpretations of the first, Zhang says. Not everyone trusts the honor of a man who abandoned the clan and lived apart for so long. He holds a hand up, palm out. I speak only the truths I've observed, without comment. Koga had barely reacted, as far as Leaf could see, but he slowly nods. As for the second point, Sevi comments, that remains to be seen. If you're talking about what I think you are, I've got to say, that's pretty optimistic, Blue says. He holds himself differently here, speaks a little differently, not quite like the way he is in front of a crowd, but not his usual self either. More stately. Strange as it may seem, young oak, I am an optimist at heart. Sevi's smile is small but fleeting. You are the young man that leader Koga believes may become champion someday, and a champion unlike most others. That earns you some consideration, as our potential future leader. And something you should know about our clan that stories may not fully capture is that we are old and have undergone many changes. We adapt, and this new world is one we may adapt to as well, in a number of unpredictable ways. Blue's eyes had widened at the mention of future leader, and he seemed to catch himself leaning forward a little, taking a moment to return to a more neutral pose. Are you saying, Lance? This visit will neither confirm nor deny any particular member of the Indigo League or government as being aware of our clan, let alone interfacing with it. My point was that, historically, it was rare for someone to be in such a position prior to their ascent, and so the usual procedures must be abandoned for new ones. Is Blue at risk of being killed before he ascends? Leaf asks, and ignores his glance at her. Because if so, that would violate your code as I understand it. Some things have changed since Michio left us. Koga turns to Sevi in obvious surprise, but she continues to meet Leaf's gaze. The core of our traditions are intact. We will only act at the will of the region's leaders, or in protection of our village. But since Michio's father died, there have been splinters from that core. Leaf glances at Koga, whose lips are pressed into a thin line. He doesn't seem surprised, however. Apparently his dad's death isn't news. That doesn't sound like a no. The village is more exposed today than it has ever been, even before your story, Zhang says. The more Leaf looks at him, the more his expression seems like a Zangoose. Or maybe that's just her imagination being primed. Preemptive actions are sometimes necessary. Leaf puts a hand on Blue's arm before he could speak, and turns to Koga. I'd like to hear what you think of this, if it doesn't undermine the role you think is best for this conversation. Koga slowly nods. I cannot decide between disappointment that the tools have continued to act as tools, or be perversely glad that some have finally shown themselves capable of more, even if it's to dishonor the clan so thoroughly. The two ninja don't respond, even by expression, and Leaf wishes she'd asked Janine what it means if there are reasons they might choose to obviously mask their true emotions. Is this particular silence a form of embarrassment for them? Or are they diplomatically avoiding rising to bait? I wrote this because I believe we have a common enemy, and I hope to bring them to your attention, Leaf says, before tensions escalate further. I wrote it because I believed you were being used by people who turned you against your own mission. You say you are not intending to coerce us, Zhang says, but you seem intent to reveal us to the world if we do not agree that you know our mission better than we do. Leader Koga has shared more details with me than I've put in the story, she says, but I haven't shared them with the police either, only kept them hidden in case I'm killed. We can respect such forethought, and it is possible that such a predictable countermeasure protected you from the more extreme splinters. But such protections may not hold, and that is, ultimately, why we're here. You want a win-win, Leaf says, feeling some relief under her rapidly beating heart. You're here to talk options that we all benefit from, not just deliver a coercive threat? Or secretly kill me? Sevi nods, and after a moment Zhang does as well. Great, really, that's what I want too. Koga seems to take that as a sign that it's time for tea, and carefully swirls the pot with both hands, then pours some for himself, then the two ninja, then for Leaf and Blue. He leads the way in drinking, and the others follow his example. The mugs don't have handles, and Leaf follows their example of holding one hand below while the other wraps around it. She doesn't really understand why people still use mugs that make their hands uncomfortably hot, but it's a local tradition that she's gotten mostly used to. It's good, a subtly sweet matcha that makes Leaf think of green and healthy things. She does her best to enjoy it, and not incessantly worry about Koga's ability to keep them safe from overly convoluted poisoning attempts that would involve things like identifying his tea supplier or pre-ingesting antidotes. I suggest, Koga says once they've all had a sip, that we begin with what we have to offer each other. Can I point to the Kaparaja in the room first? Blue asks, and when Koga nods, looks at each of Ninja before settling on Sevi. I'm guessing Leaf is the only one here who's not dark. I heard what you said about your clan adapting, but some people are probably stressing about what happens if a psychic goes rooting around in her head. I don't think Leaf is safe, so long as that's a worry, and that worries me. More than that, I don't know how often your people get captured, but with Miracle Eye out there, it's just a matter of time. So yeah, you could adapt your lifestyle, split into smaller groups that communicate less, minimize risks. but the public knowing you're out there. It's coming, one way or another. Granted, Sevi says, and glances at Zhang, who takes a moment before nodding as well. All granted. And yet the pace of that introduction, how it occurs, the initial framing, all might matter a great deal. The story takes control of that away from the clan, and on existential matters, reactions are predictable. That's just... Koga clears his throat and Blue falls silent, frowning at him. The gym leader slowly takes another sip of his tea, and the two ninja do so as well. After a moment, Blue, face smoothed out, does so as well, and Leaf follows suit. She's not sure if it's some explicit thing, for good conversation etiquette or negotiations or whatever, but it does help remind her to take a breath and widen her attention from the fear and stress that had been growing. She takes another sip of tea for good measure. It's actually really tasty, and lets her breath out slowly. After another moment, Koga says, "Again, I move to begin with what we can offer each other." He waits a moment, meeting each of their gazes, and when Blue gives a small nod, turns to the two ninja. "You know my ambitions. A measure of belief and respect for the original principles at the clan's heart, not to mention some sentiment, would have me deal with you as fairly and leniently as you could hope for. Of all the possible ways the clan might come through this period of inevitable change, I expect my way to be the least disruptive, but perhaps that does not make it the best." He turns to Blue, who seems to take it as his cue. He leans back, takes a slow breath in, then says, "It's hard to know exactly what I can do for you that you'd care about. My goals are simple. I want Indigo to be a beacon of safety and stability in the world. A beacon of ambitious safety, which means an end to the Storm Trio, and now, an end to Rocket. I want more trainers and Pokemon alive and safe to focus on other things, including securing the region against future potential threats, like another Hoenn incident, or whatever those dreams were about. With enough spare resources, we could even start expanding our borders, which might cause tension with other regions," Sevi says. "You could end up needing us more than ever before, particularly if the Master Ball destabilizes interregional politics." Blue nods. "I understand that this is where your focus lies, and I admit I haven't paid as much attention to it as other stuff. I won't act like I know more than you about how big the problem is, or how necessary you are. That all might come later. In the meantime, I can promise I'll keep an open mind, and that so long as our mutual goals are to keep Indigo safe, I won't turn down potential allies, so long as they aren't using that alliance to help other potential threats. Not as enticing as Michio's offer," Zhang says. "You think so?" Koga shrugs. "But I would be a different sort of champion than he. If the clans are as necessary as I was always told, then it would not surprise me if a result of Oak's leadership is your work being more respected, more valued in the long run." "We do not do what we do for respect," Sevi says, tone mildly disapproving, or offended, as if Koga should know better. It makes Leaf wonder again if she's actually his mother, or maybe an aunt or something. "And we cannot be effective in the light you would drag us into." Leaf couldn't tell Laura about this meeting, but she did ask for advice, a couple weeks ago, by asking about a hypothetical scenario where she's negotiating with a mob boss who reached out about leverage she holds. When you're trying to convince someone to change their mind or path, especially if they have a big ego, it's important to give them off-ramps, ways to save face not just with others but themselves as well. "There's a mistake I see people make a lot," Leaf says, bringing everyone's attention to her. "Myself included sometimes when reality leads to a shitty thing happening, and we don't want to accept that shitty thing. So we come up with a solution that seems like it will help, but only because it ignores the part of reality that makes the shitty stuff happen in the first place." "And what part of reality do you believe we're ignoring exactly?" Sevi says, and her tone and gaze both convey that she is not happy with where this is going. "I'm getting to that. Anyone could say that someone they disagree with is just missing some part of reality, but a thing that can help check if it's true is focusing on how well the person understands the depth of the problem they're facing." She looks between Sevi and Zhang. "I'm not sure this conversation is worth having until you both show us that you really, actually get what it will mean if, when, the ninja clans are revealed to the world. You speak of the single most pervasive consequence of living life in a hidden village, Zhang says, and he does less to hide his annoyance with Leaf. The risks you casually imply we might not have thought of are things we've spent generations living in worry of, generations considering and preparing for. Put like that, yeah, she probably does come off as arrogant. But if she doesn't have the right to question them, who will? If they're reaching out to you, it's a negotiation, and there's no surer sign that you have power than an honest attempt to work things out verbally, instead of through violence, Laura said. Be civil, but don't cower. Most violent criminals have an ego, but they don't respect weakness. And maybe that means you're completely prepared, Leaf says. But my guess is it means that all the kinds of revealing you've spent generations preparing for became mostly irrelevant once Miracle Eye was invented, let alone the other unprecedented things that have happened in the past year. I would have a hard time admitting that if I were in the clan. I would have a hard time accepting that maybe the legacy I've worked for is at actual risk of destruction. If you think I'm wrong, I'd like you to show me how. Otherwise, we're probably just going to talk past each other because we have different estimations of how big the threat you're facing is. The room is quiet, and Leaf simply sips her tea and waits. As she expected, the others drink some tea as well, and afterward Sevi bows her head to Leaf. Your argument may have some merit. Perhaps we can discuss it further at a later meeting, if this one goes well. Until then, the question that remains most relevant is what you can offer us, and what we can offer you. Leaf nods, then lets out a slow breath, trying not to feel too happy about how that went. It's possible she's just being diplomatic, or maybe she just wants to hear more at some point to shore up defenses. I don't plan on becoming champion, or holding political power beyond the influence of my words. If you want to know why I'm writing the story, it's that. I won't lie for you, but I don't have to. The most important part of the story I've been writing is that the ending is unwritten. Zhang's brow creases. Your offer is empty. You would continue writing in any case, and so long as you have principles, all that would change in the story would result from our own actions, unless you plan to misrepresent us again. Leaf's refutation dies on her lips, and she tries not to look at Koga. Again? The assassinations you wrote the clan engaging in, at the behest of the criminals, Sevi says, and to Leah's surprise, carefully reaches into her pocket and pulls out a piece of notebook paper, which she opens to examine. Starting on chapter 19. Is that a list of inaccuracies, grievances? Leaf would love to take a look at it, which is no doubt the purpose it serves. She does her best to pretend the woman just recited the information from memory and not seem too eager for the paper, which returns to the woman's pocket. If you have a side of the story you believe is being misrepresented, I'd be happy to discuss matters of accuracy at any point. But I will assist her in ensuring your perspective is taken with the proper skepticism, Koga says, tone and expression politely neutral. If you would justify the work we've done for criminal elements, you must provide better arguments and evidence than I was given all those years ago. Your sense of purity in our purpose was a credit to you, Michio, Sevi says. But that same purity was also blinding at times. Self-righteous anger does not detract from what we protected, even at the behest of criminal elements. Oof. Now Leaf is hoping the woman is an aunt or something, instead of the leader's mom, and finds herself getting angry on Koga's behalf. She does her best to tamp the heat in her chest down. If you wish to debate this here, I will, Koga says, voice holding only a hint of hardness. But I don't believe it's productive. Zhang leans forward slightly. It does not require a debate, but the whole story must include the implicit endorsement of our wielders. So long as we did not act against the region's interests at the behest of the criminals within it, our purpose was being fulfilled. Not everyone will share your naivete, and if we are to treat this as a fair recounting, it must include the specifics of the work we did that you would condemn, rather than calling it all corruption. Koga shrugs. After living among the region for decades now, and having risen to one of the highest positions of power within it, I am more confident, not less, that however much the village has changed since I left, the rest of society has progressed much more quickly and would disagree with your justifications. But I don't object to truthful explanations, if you wish to provide them. Without knowing what information may have been withheld from me, I obviously cannot be too confident. Leaf holds up a hand before anyone can respond. I appreciate this sort of exchange and think it proves the value of my offer. She smiles apologetically, which may not seem like much, but I will note does actually take me a fair amount of time. Your village is going to face public perception at some point. Maybe you could honestly say what matters to you is being revealed, and you don't care how the public thinks of you. But whether it's Leader Koga, Blue, or someone else in charge when you're revealed to the region, those legitimate wielders, the political leaders, will care about public scrutiny. The two ninja are silent again, and it's Sevi who brings her teacup to her lips this time, followed by a, maybe slightly reluctant-seeming, Zhang. Leaf has to put her attention into actually appreciating it again, rather than letting her mind loop on stressing over the things she just said, her word choice, which is already blurring in her memory, how quiet Blue is being and if he's stressing about something she hasn't noticed, etc. When Sevi speaks, it's with her teacup still in hand. The offers have been received. Ours are simple but commensurate. We can help you find Rocket's head and heart. And we are confident that without us, you will not be able to, Zhang says. Consider that comment an upfront payment and sign of good faith. Leaf blinks at him and sees Blue lean forward slightly. Are you saying Archer is one of you? Or from another clan? Or that he's leaving Indigo soon? I've said all I will for now. To continue negotiations, Sevi says. Delay further chapters of the story. We will return to the village and share what we've discussed. I can do that, Leaf says. But there are more people we'll need clued in, if we talk again. Red Varus, Leaf nods. And his mother, Laura. Zhang shakes his head. Interpol is a non-starter. If some form of arrangement is reached, some new form for the village takes shape, it will be done as an Indigo matter. The interregional police have no say in how we protect ourselves, and will only deepen the rift by their predictable response to our existence. I understand the concern, Leaf says. But Red is a unique case. He's technically an Indigo hunter. The words sound bizarre to say out loud even now. Who's collaborating with Interpol, and he may be one of the only people in the world who can actually keep a secret. Sevi leans forward. But will he? A secret like this, given the stakes? Yes, Blue says without hesitating. He cares about stopping Rocket, not boosting his career as a hunter or whatever. Leaf is less sure than Blue, and feels suitably bad about that. Red does have a sense of loyalty, and he might not feel like he has the right to make decisions like this when he's been entrusted by the police and Interpol. He is, after all, still in a sort of gray zone of trustworthiness, and stuck representing trustworthiness for psychics as a whole. But what makes her confident is that he held on to so many secrets for so long. I still don't fully understand how his powers work, but from what I do understand, he can hear the proposal while pre-committing to not sharing any secrets if we can't reach agreement, then decide if he wants to help while holding the secret or not, then forget the secret if no agreement is reached. A truly bizarre existence if true, Sevi says, speaking slowly, but a valuable consideration. It is bizarre, and Leaf thinks of Rowan suddenly and suppresses a shiver. She again hopes that he just continues to stay missing and that Red isn't at risk of becoming like him. Zhang frowns. Assuming we can trust that he will honor his pre-commitments in the first place. Sevi nods and puts her teacup down. We have much to discuss. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. We will reach out to you again soon. Leaf doesn't ask if they'll agree not to kill her or Blue in the meantime. It would be an empty reassurance, in multiple ways. I look forward to it, she says, mostly honestly. Koga stands. I will escort you out. The ninja rise to their feet, their movements smooth and effortless, and Leaf and Blue stand as well. They all exchange bows before Koga leads them through the back door. Leaf nearly collapses onto her seat once they're gone, and takes her hand out of her pocket, where she'd been intermittently holding her phone, prepped to signal to Red that they needed him. She lets out a shaky breath, then rubs her face. That was pretty intense. Blue says. She hears a thump and turns to see him flopped onto his back, arms splayed. I don't trust them. Leaf hesitates, then nods. It seemed too easy, right? Too easy and too, I don't know, set up, knocked down. It was like they were putting up a token resistance to each thing, then changing their minds as needed. Leaf drinks more tea, but it's not as calming as it was during the meeting, oddly. Maybe they're just feeling us out. It's not like they committed to anything. Yeah, was kind of hoping for something more solid from all this, to be honest. How much longer are we going to be strung along? The door slides open and Leaf's heart jumps, nerves still on edge. But it's just Janine walking in, followed by Leader Koga. Probably a while longer, Janine says. Unfortunately so, Koga adds, smiling slightly. But you two did very well. Thanks. Leaf tentatively smiles back. Doesn't feel like it. We were just saying that their hiding something can be taken for granted. Right. But also that it seemed too easy? Ah, that may not be the sign of what you think it is. Koga sits, smile a bit wider now. My people are not used to this, you see. They are excellent infiltrators, but this was not an infiltration. They were here as, not themselves exactly, but a representative of the clan, which put them far closer to reality than most training or missions would. My guess is they came cloaked in a role of themselves, a shadow clone, if you will, with a cover personality that could act truthfully, but also be dismissed, pivoted into a different perspective and stance. Wait, Janine says. I wasn't here, someone needs to explain. They were play acting? Leaf asks, not sure if she should be skeptical or laugh. Like putting on a play, complete with standard ninja tropes? A fair comparison. Wait, seriously, explain what I missed, Janine says as she pours herself tea. Oh wow, you brought out the good stuff, huh? It wasn't that much, Leaf says. I mean, it wasn't, I don't know, overacted? Overdramatic? They were professional, Koga agrees, and it served a purpose both for them and us. But while I only have guesses as to what, I would caution against worry that there's some deeper deception occurring, and focus on preparing for another meeting, as well as what our long-term goals will be once they give the appearance of compliance. Blue sits up, and Leaf feels her stomach grow cold. You think they're going to betray us? They will almost certainly reach out to Rocket to try and get a better offer, Koga says. But their goals don't align nearly as well, so I am not too worried about this leading to a complete loss for us. Ah, Janine says, and sighs. They're going to split. She sips some tea, then looks at Leaf and Blue. Basically, the ones that are okay with being outed will agree to try and make some kind of new thing work. And the ones who aren't will join Rocket, Blue asks, fists clenched and lips twisted in disgust. Koga shakes his head. Other villages might, but not quite. No, the remainders won't join Rocket. They will form another village. Leaf rubs her eyes. A secret ninja village? One that, continues their current methods and mission, after convincing everyone they're not anymore? That is my best guess. So what do we do about it? Blue asks. It's better than them joining the enemies, but I don't want crazy vigilante ninja around my region. He looks at Janine. No offense. She rolls her eyes. I get it. We'll see how all this goes before I make any promises. Maybe you'll end up needing ninja to fight ninja. Isn't that exactly what their justification is? Leaf listens to them argue, slightly distracted, as she takes her phone out and messages Red to let him know they'll be done soon. She's hungry, and needs to fill the guys in on what they've found at the Cinnabar Mansion lab, but her thoughts keep turning back to the conversation with the two ninja. She's not sure she's ever had a civil conversation with someone she knew might be willing to kill her before, and she probably hasn't spoken to any ninja besides Janine and her dad before. But as they leave the gym to meet up with Red, she can't shake the feeling that the conversation with Sevi felt familiar somehow.
This has been an AI reading of the Pokemon fanfic, Pokemon: The Origin of Species, written by Daystar Eld. If you enjoy this work, please visit patreon.com/daystareld, where you can support the author. Additionally, if you enjoyed this podcast and wish to help support the creation of others like it, you can visit patreon.com/askwhocastsai, where we are releasing episodes 4 weeks in advance of the regular feed. Thanks for listening.